Golden State is the team that, going into free agency was thought to be one of the leaders because,
Yeah.
his desire to play with Stephen Curry, his desire to play with Draymond Green, they're close. And by the way, breaking news here, I don't know if it is breaking news, LeBron James and Draymond Green are spending some time here together this week.
LeBron James and we're on teams and we won. So in the spirit of winning, the winning has already started, guys.
LeBron James's own agent appeared on national television and insisted there had been no recruiting pitches, but he was answering a different question than the one most people thought they were hearing. Rich Paul deals with conversations involving teams. He doesn't oversee what gets discussed during a round of golf. By that point, one of the NBA's most influential voices had already spent several days with his longtime friend and client. No scheduled meeting, no executives, just time together on the golf course. Then Draymond Green went on camera and confirmed the story himself. He didn't push back against it. Instead, he acknowledged it without the slightest hint of hesitation. But pay close attention to the way he frames the details. He admits the conversation happened. He reveals how much time he had. He even says he believes he's pretty good at making his case. Then he suddenly stops. At no point does he reveal a single thing he actually told LeBron James. And just before the segment ends, he refuses to complete a thought about how the entire story became public. The loudest personality in basketball suddenly choosing not to say more. But before that, there's one question that matters most. Why was he there in the first place? The answer was already on camera just 15 seconds before the story surfaced.
State is the team that, going into free agency was thought to be one of the leaders because, his desire to play with Stephen Curry, his desire to play with Draymond Green, they're close. And by the way, breaking news here.
That was the motivation spoken out loud before anyone realized what was about to unfold. Golden State had already positioned itself as the frontrunner, not because of salary cap flexibility, but because of two people, Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. The Warriors' biggest advantage wasn't financial, it was built on relationships, and one of those relationships was about to get several days of private access to the player making the decision. I don't know if this qualifies as breaking news, but LeBron James and Draymond Green are spending some time together this week. He softens the report even as he delivers it, then says it anyway because he understands the impact it will have. Shams Charania is ESPN's top NBA insider. His job is uncovering the conversations and behind-the-scenes developments that most people never get to see. And at that moment, that's all he had. No trade, no contract, just two players spending time together at a location he chose not to reveal. Even so, it immediately became a major story. The setting itself was enough to spark attention. Then LeBron's agent appeared on television and made the conversation even more interesting. Well, no, we're just evaluating everything. Are you still taking pitches actively? Pitches? No. He repeats the question before giving his answer, almost as if he's taking an extra moment to choose his words carefully. Then comes the response. No pitches. That's the clip everyone shared, but it also ends about 20 seconds before the most important part. Pitches? I don't know about pitches, but listen, I think there's communication from players directly to him, and obviously I handle it from an organizational perspective. And that's the key detail. He's not covering anything up. He's making a distinction. Front offices communicate through him. Fellow players can reach LeBron directly. On national television, he's acknowledging a separate line of communication exists, one that isn't his responsibility to manage. The only thing he doesn't reveal is who's on the other end of those conversations. Draymond Green eventually fills that missing piece, but before he gets there, he turns his attention to the reporter who first broke the story.
Disclosed location. I don't know if I can just...
Listen, I don't have problems with Shams. I think he's great at what he does. I think sometimes things steps a little outside the scope of work, and reporting whereabouts, I think, is a little outside of the scope of work.
That wasn't an insult. It was something even more telling. It was a public line being drawn by a player, clearly defining the boundary between himself and a reporter, while the cameras were rolling. Then he shifts his focus, not to the fact that the story was reported, but to the fact that the location became public. He isn't upset that the news was shared. He's frustrated that people knew where it happened, which suggests the trip was never meant to be seen in the first place.
And being is, obviously, Brian, that's my brother. We've built quite the relationship, and so I think us hanging out, or us kicking it together, us golfing together, whatever it is, I don't think it's really that newsworthy, because it's not like, oh my God, they've never hung out before, and now all of a sudden free agency's going on and they're hanging out.
That's a solid defense, and it works. The original report gave the impression that the meeting had been carefully arranged. Two players who supposedly never spend time together suddenly end up together just as a major decision is approaching. Draymond pushes back on that idea. According to him, the golf outing came first, long before any leverage entered the conversation. But pay attention to what that explanation accomplishes. If their friendship is completely normal, then spending time together is completely normal. And if the access itself is ordinary, then no one has much reason to be surprised by what he chose to do with it. He isn't simply defending his actions. He's removing the foundation of the criticism before it can take hold.
Opposite is pretty common, very common, and so I thought, when I saw that, I was on an airplane, I was like, come on, man. But I am a firm believer in get your money how you get your money.
He's on a flight when he comes across the report. Suddenly, a private weekend has become a national headline. His reaction comes down to 3 words that sound more exhausted than angry. But notice what happens next. He never says the report was false. Instead, he suggests it became a story because it was valuable to publish, leaving himself with little room to deny what happened. In doing so, he effectively acknowledges that the story was real. That means the next step is explaining what actually took place during that time together. And when he does, he doesn't hesitate for a second.
Brothers, I'd be remiss if I don't take the opportunity to throw my pitch in there. I'd be crazy if we're together for X amount of days and at no point am I like, yo, we need to chop it up. Like, what the hell going on? What we doing? And so there's that. Of course I did that. And of course, the pitch was crazy.
A player openly acknowledging that he tried to recruit the biggest free agent in basketball during a private meeting and admitting he enjoyed the opportunity. He doesn't try to downplay it. Instead, he says it would have been crazy not to make his case. This doesn't come across like a confession. It sounds more like a point of pride. Now, think back to that earlier discussion. The belief was that Golden State had become the frontrunner because LeBron wanted the chance to play alongside Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. That was the theory. What happened on the golf course was that theory becoming real, with Draymond getting the opportunity to speak directly to the person at the center of the decision. But pay attention to what he actually reveals, because it's less than it first appears. He confirms that the recruiting conversation happened. He tells you the opportunity lasted for days, not just a few hours. He even shares his opinion that anyone in his position would have done the same. What he never does, however, is repeat a single word of what he actually said to LeBron.
I think I'm pretty decent at it. Does it change anything? Does it make anything happen? I don't know. I hope so. With the things that I shared in it, I believe it definitely is going to make the brain work a little bit.
Be careful here, because this is the point where a lot of people begin filling in gaps with assumptions. Draymond isn't describing a proven outcome. He's offering his own expectation. He starts by saying, "I don't know," and ends with, "I believe." Those are his own words about the conversation he had. No one outside that meeting has verified what impact it had. The most important detail is hidden in the middle of what he says. The things that I shared. Things, plural. That tells you the conversation included multiple points he believed were worth making. What those points actually were, he never reveals. Everything circulating online beyond that is speculation. Then he does something even more interesting than acknowledging the pitch. He tries to minimize it. You know, I don't think there's a decision that's been made, but say if there was, it'll make you think twice about it, you know? And so that's that. But we wasn't going to hang out for a recruiting pitch. Except, that explanation doesn't really reduce what happened. He never says there was no decision to make. He says he doesn't think one had been made, leaving the possibility open. And his final comment isn't a denial either. He's not claiming the recruiting conversation never happened. He's saying it wasn't the reason they got together. That distinction changes everything. His position depends on the friendship being the reason for the trip, with the recruiting conversation simply becoming part of it. Otherwise, the relationship looks less like two friends spending time together and more like one player actively recruiting another. So what, according to Draymond, was the trip actually about? LeBron James and I weren't on teams and we won. So, you know, in the spirit of winning, the winning has already started, guys. That was the trip. It was nice, great golf, we were the winning team. That's what we do. Listen closely, because there's more to those words than first meets the eye. On the surface, he's talking about golf. They were teammates for the round and they won. That's the literal meaning. But notice the language he chooses. Teams, winning, the winning has already started, that's what we do. He's describing a casual golf outing using the same vocabulary you might expect in a championship conversation, all while insisting he wasn't recruiting. He never explains exactly when that winning supposedly started. He simply leaves the thought hanging. Now the picture comes together. Not the leak, but the meeting itself. Several days on a golf course. Two people. One facing the biggest decision of the offseason. The other with both an opportunity and a message he believed was worth delivering. That opportunity mattered because of everyone else competing for the same outcome. The reported frontrunners included Cleveland, Miami, Golden State, Philadelphia, and Minnesota. 5 organizations. 5 front offices preparing presentations, making calls, and communicating through Rich Paul. Meanwhile, one player had several uninterrupted days with LeBron on a golf course, with no formal meeting listed on anyone's schedule. Everyone else made their case through the traditional process. Draymond had the chance to speak directly to LeBron himself. Players have also reached out to LeBron James to recruit him. And yes, all the voice notes have also been listened to. Voice notes. Players sent messages. Draymond spent days in person. Both qualify as recruiting efforts. Only one involved extended face-to-face access. And that's exactly why that access carried so much value. LeBron had reportedly made it clear behind the scenes that he wanted to join a situation where he could genuinely compete for another championship, a place with the right environment, culture, and team dynamic where he felt he could make a meaningful impact. Championship, happiness, environment, culture. Now go back and read Draymond's comments about the golf trip again. Winning teams, that's what we do. He wasn't trying to sell a roster on camera. He was describing an experience, a culture, and he had several days to talk about it with someone who had reportedly identified those exact qualities as priorities. Now think about the one person responsible for managing the official process. I really have no idea how he finds these things out. I did not tell him that, but he found it out. The agent says there were no pitches. The friend says, of course he made his case. Both statements can exist at the same time, and that's the key. Rich Paul manages the formal side of free agency. He handles the calls, the meetings, and communication with organizations. A golf outing doesn't fall under that process. Draymond didn't need an appointment or a scheduled presentation because he already had something no front office could arrange: direct, personal access. And that's the advantage no one else in the race could match. Which brings us back to the one thing he still chose not to reveal.
Report was great. But I also be like, man, how the hell does he find this stuff out? And I have an inkling on how Shams finds this stuff out. I have an inkling. But, you know, I'm gonna keep that to myself. I think some things are better left unsaid.
He says it 3 separate times. People don't usually repeat the same word like that without a reason. Then, just as the conversation reaches its most interesting point, he stops. Look closely at what he chose to reveal and what he chose to keep to himself. He openly admitted the recruiting conversation happened. He acknowledged they spent several days together. He even shared his opinion that the pitch was a strong one. None of those details seemed difficult for him to give away because they didn't cost him anything. Of course he made his case. Of course he believed it was worth making. That's not something he treats like a secret. To him, it's almost a badge of honor. What he never gives up is the substance of the conversation. Not once does he repeat a single sentence he actually said to LeBron James. And when the discussion turns to how the story became public, he leaves that thought unfinished as well. That's what makes it stand out. This is someone known for speaking his mind without hesitation. Yet on the only 2 topics where he alone has first-hand knowledge, he suddenly becomes careful with his words. So, here's what we can say with confidence, and nothing beyond it. Draymond Green spent several days with the biggest free agent in basketball, while his own team was widely viewed as the frontrunner, largely because of its relationships with him and Stephen Curry. During that time, he made his case. He believes it was an effective one. Whether LeBron James agreed with any part of it is something no one outside that conversation can honestly confirm. Only 2 people know exactly what was said on that golf course, and neither of them has chosen to share it. If you think Draymond already revealed more than enough, hit the like button. If you think he should explain exactly what he told LeBron during that conversation, let everyone know in the comments. And if you enjoy breaking down the stories behind the headlines, be sure to subscribe for more.